Expository preaching in a world of spiritual nominalism, exploring the churches in India's Northeast. It is my PhD thesis dissertation. We can enter into the discussion of spiritual nominalism from various doors or entry points. I have chosen to engage the issue of spiritual nominalism from the angle of preaching, exploring on how preaching and spiritual nominalism are related or not related. If they are related, what types or methods of preaching help in incubating spiritual nominalism in the church, and what methods of preaching will help in combating nominalism in the churches and society. This book is actually for everyone, for the seminary students and teachers, especially from the practical theology department, in terms of research methods and engaging with the subject of preaching and spirituality. For pastoral trainers, so that they may know what teaching materials and syllabus to prepare for training the pastors and preachers for pulpit ministry. For the church leaders, pastors and preachers, so that they may reevaluate their own preaching ministries, that they may rededicate themselves to the calling they have received to feed God's sheep. For lay preachers who do get the privilege of taking the pulpit of the church, to enlighten and inspire them on the massive honor and privilege of preaching. For the congregation as a whole, it will help them to be more serious and intentional in listening to sermons as they come to the church in the 15 Baptist churches of Manipur Baptist Convention. Personally, I experienced phases of spiritual dryness and lethargy in my life, but I could not connect this phenomenon to one single thing. As a student of preaching, I became curious if this spiritual situation could be connected to preaching that I have listened to over the years. So I decided to explore their relationship. It listens to the voices and experiences of the people. They include the pastors, church leaders, and congregation, lay people. The research explores the context of the Baptist churches in Imphal city to understand what, according to them, is spiritual nominalism. So although the working definition was borrowed from Lausanne Movement Consultation on Nominalism, we eventually came up with a context-specific understanding of nominalism. People can compare if these are similar to their own contexts or if they are different. In this book, we get to listen to the pastors, the church leaders, telling us about their success, their struggles, their obstacles, and burden in terms of sermon preparation and preaching. The lay people also tell us about their response in hearing the sermons of their pastors and preachers and how they were motivated or discouraged by the quality of preaching in the churches. Both the church leaders and lay people share their thoughts on how better preaching can impact the spiritual lives of the people. Because the participants in this research recommended that expository preaching will be a good method to address spiritual nominalism, I have briefly engaged with two homileticians. They are both practitioners and theologians of preaching, John Stott and Timothy Keller. We looked at their theology of preaching and their methods of sermon preparation. Preachers, pastors, and others who take the pulpit will benefit and learn much from these two homileticians. Pastors and preachers will be introduced to the spiritually nominal context of the Old Testament Malachi and another in New Testament Corinthians. They will discover how Malachi and Apostle Paul employed expository sermon method to address the spiritually lethargic situation of their respective contexts. To know that there are several pastors who are laboring very sincerely despite various setbacks and challenges to feed the organic Word of God to the people. To hear from the pastors themselves on how they have not done justice to the ministry of the Word and how they want to reorganize their schedules and priorities to give their pulpit ministry the weightage it deserves. To hear from the lay people that there are several people who are ever eager, searching for the church that fits the uncompromising Word of God to the people. To hear that the Word of God is impacting the ungodly society, although they may not openly acknowledge it. That the pulpit ministry of the churches may be strengthened, that pastors and preachers may begin to intentionally take the ministry of feeding the Word of God more seriously. That pastors and preachers may realize that they have this great opportunity of speaking, teaching, and impacting every individual in the church and society every week, which doctors, engineers, civil servants, politicians, and others do not have the privilege. That they may realize that the opportunity of bringing change through the life-giving Word of God is given unto them.